Hello and welcome to the Low Carb Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Holly Jean. I'm joined with my co-host, Leah. Hi, Leah.
Hi, Holly. Hi, everyone.
And we have a very special guest today. We have Brian O'Halloran. He is a pharmacist for like over 20 years, and he's a certified ketogenic nutrition specialist. So we are going to have a great conversation around those two topics today. Welcome to the show, Brian. So great to have you.
And thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, so first, I think the burning question we all want to know is how does a pharmacist turn keto? What is your story? Tell us all about it.
Yeah, great question. So this all happened relatively recently because I was a pharmacist I worked for a retail pharmacy for 10 years, and I thought that was going to be my life. And they did some restructuring and things started going not in the direction I'd like to see them go into. So I decided to not do retail and do I'm a clinical pharmacist at a major insurance company, and I help people go over the medications. I mostly deal with the geriatric population. So so I was doing that, and I just noticed that there was a lot of things that were happening this over and over again. People diagnosed with diabetes, high blood pressure, and they just kept adding more and more medications. And at that time, I really was not that healthy myself. I was very unhealthy, and I just thought that's the way. I didn't know anything about nutrition at all. They didn't really teach us that in pharmacy school. And I remember when I was working back at retail, when people were asking about weight loss, I always say, oh yeah, eat less and move more. And I want to apologize here to anybody that was in earshot of that horrible advice. That was such a horrible thing to say because I didn't know any better. And I do apologize for anybody listening. But anyway, getting back to my story, I was very unhealthy. I was listening to a podcast, a random podcast that had nothing to do with health. It was Adam Carolla and Dr. Drew Pinsky. They were the Loveline people back in the day.
Oh, I remember.
Yep. So they've grown up quite a bit, and they actually start talking about things that are happening in the world today. And I was listening to their podcast on the way to work, and they had a guest on who was part of the keto community. His name was Vinny Tortorich, and he was talking about no sugar, no grains, and losing weight. And I started thinking to myself, boy, that is really interesting. And so I had a lot of weight to lose. I was, very unhealthy. So I started kind of going down this road of cutting out the sugars and grains. And I ended up losing 42 pounds. And I've never looked back. In fact, I'm always looking forward, because once you start learning this and then getting introduced to other people that's in this community, between Nina Teicholz and Gary Taubes and Jason Fung and Ken Berry, you start going down these rabbit holes, and there's so much to learn. And I realized that promoting drugs, promoting medications, you're not focusing on the root cause of the problem.
Yeah, so true. And this really is a wonderful community that we have here. So what did you always want to be a pharmacist when you grew up?
Yeah, I did. And it's so funny because
you're like, I'm a legal drug dealer.
Right. Yeah. So I grew up in a very small town in Massachusetts, and there was a drugstore, a corner drugstore, and I loved it there because everybody went to this drugstore, and the pharmacist was like, everybody respected him, and he was just so nice to all of his patients. And I'm like, I love science. I'm like, I got to do this. I have it. And so when I was 15, I went to that pharmacy. And I'm like, can I have a job? And of course, there was nothing to be hired, but I kept going back I'd say every week and just saying, hey, any openings? And finally, the pharmacist there, he got frustrated. He's like, you want a job? Fine. The basement needs cleaning up. So I literally started in the basement. And, I worked my way up and, became a technician or a clerk or whatever. And I never looked back. I always loved that helping people and showing people like different equipment in the pharmacy. And of course, pharmacy has changed a lot since then, but that's kind of where I started.
Yeah. I remember when I was in high school, I worked at Payless Drugstore, which is now Rite Aid. And they weren't the pharmacists, but like the cutest, most popular boys in high school worked at the pharmacy. And so I've always thought being a pharmacist was cool. Like if all that's where the cool guys work, then I'm okay with that.
It's so funny. I was going to say, I actually worked in pharmacy that was my first job when I was 15, but I had to start cleaning the shelves, so I can relate to that. And I used to put everything on the shelves, take it off, clean it and put it back. And someone would always say, Leah, you've put it on back to front. What are you doing? So I'd always put everything on mirror back in. So yeah, I didn't really, I did go on to be a dispensary technician, but I didn't go on to be a pharmacist.
See, that's how we get them young, make it cool.
Yeah.
About cleaning, I just wanted to mention my old boss. He had this horrible saying, time to lean is time to clean.
We say that in the restaurant industry too. And now I say it to my children. Well, if you've got time to lean, you've got time to clean.
At the time, I hated that saying, and but it's funny. He's since retired, and he's quite a bit older. And to this day, I have always sent him a Christmas card. Because he had such an influence on me where I am today, and I just the thing. I always send him a Christmas card, and so yeah. Nice, so lovely. Nice story, I guess. Yeah.
Very sweet. Okay, I have a question about pharmaceutical training, because I did see something, I don't remember who it was online, another like a pharmacist who is speaking out against certain drugs, and someone was giving her pushback saying, what do you know? You're not a doctor. And she was like, well, actually. So can you tell us, what is the difference? Because you've already mentioned patients, and you do have a responsibility when you're giving out medication. So can you give us some clarity on what those roles are there, and how much responsibility do you actually have?
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility, especially in that retail setting, because you're the last person to make sure that the patient is getting what the doctor prescribed. And it's not necessarily, oh, it's just on the shelf, just take it off the shelf and give it to me. There's lots of drug interactions you got to look at, refill history, different medications that were prescribed before. So the pharmacist has that responsibility to make sure that patient, the last line of defense before the patient takes that medicine. So it got pretty stressful sometimes, especially when you're dealing with, the drive-through patients that are at the counter asking for questions for the pharmacist. And you got also the insurance part of it, people on the line. So it made the whole area very, very stressful for me. But did I answer that question correctly? I don't know if I'm going into a different line there, but yeah, you are the person, you're that last, like you said, the last line of defense, to where a doctor may not necessarily know that this same patient also saw another doctor over here, but they're always going to the same pharmacy. And so you're seeing, oh, wait a minute, this is a red flag, because if you're seeing a cardiologist for one thing, and let's say an endocrinologist for another thing, they don't always talk to each other, right? That's exactly right. And also hospital discharges, right? So, you have a whole list of medicines that you're taking at home. You get admitted to the hospital and you get discharged from the hospital with a bunch of medicines from the hospital. Like, for example, somebody would come home with atorvastatin or Lipitor, which is a cholesterol medicine, and they are already taking Crestor at home. And so it's like, wait a second, we're not on the same page here. So yes. And then allergies, sometimes things get overlooked from the doctors. They'll prescribe something that the patient may be allergic to. And so you got to be, it's so challenging, when we're dealing with that, the doctors, the, hospital, stays, allergies, drug interactions, it's pretty complex.
Yeah. And I imagine like adding to the complexity, like if someone is not always using the same pharmacy, do those records follow them from place to place or no?
It depends. I mean, if you are dealing with your insurance company, then yes, that the insurance will, flag, hey, this was just filled at another pharmacy.
Okay.
And that was our way to know. However, people are smart. And I was at a pharmacist when the opioid crisis was at full-fledged, and that was a horrible time
Yeah, I
for
imagine.
everybody. And yeah, because what patients would do is that they would pay cash. And so there's no way to track that. Luckily, they started this prescription monitoring program so that we could see where, even if they paid cash, we'd be able to see where they paid cash and, figure out. And that was, boy, I felt like a police officer more than a pharmacist, but, and it should have been that way. But, unfortunately, we're paying the price now because a lot of people have been addicted to that now.
Yeah.
So
That had to have been
sad.
around the time when I had to start swiping my ID to buy Sudafed,
Yep, that's
which I
exactly
no
right.
longer take, but I was given advice of, oh, you should just take Sudafed for the rest of your life for allergies. Another topic for another day.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to talk about hold on. Okay, so you have a program now where you work with do you work with patients that are your like pharmaceutical patients, or like how does that work with getting clients now to help them with a ketogenic diet and your pharmaceutical background? Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure it out, to be honest with you. There's the being online and being part of Instagram. I have to tell you, before this whole business started, I never had an Instagram account. And you talk about learning a different language, and that it's a completely different language. And I'm still learning, and I'm learning what I don't want to be doing. I know a lot of people, and they're good at it. They create the reels and the stories and the dancing around. That's not me. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. I mean, I like to promote my message. I do a lot of posting about things that I'm truly passionate about in terms of how medications can interfere with the ketogenic lifestyle. And that's my whole point, is as a pharmacist, I want to try to get people off their medications. And of course, I don't have the legality to do so. I mean, I can help them, talk to their doctor. The doctor is the one to make that decision, obviously. So
Yeah, but I think you have a really unique offering in that you're trained in knowing how to do the ketogenic diet. So you understand how that's going to make changes in your body physiologically. And so if you do have clients coming to you saying, hey, I'd like to change this like lifestyle and diet, but I am on these medications, at least you're educated and you can have the conversations with their doctor and open up that dialogue, to where a lot of like health coaches, or even like me, like I wouldn't feel comfortable speaking to a doctor about my recommendations for clients. So you really have an advantage there, especially if your niche or your clientele are people who are specifically trying to like wean off of drugs.
yeah, exactly. And there's another part of that too, in that we have to, hopefully their doctors are receptive to the recommendation, and I think they should be. Unfortunately, doctors do not have that nutrition training when they will go to medical school. I don't know how many. I think they get like a few hours. You can look that up. I'm not sure exactly, but it's not that much. So I'm hoping that they are receptive to that. But the thing is, when you adopt a ketogenic lifestyle, the doctor is going to have to do something with the medications, because your blood pressure is going to drop if you continue on the medication course. Your blood sugar is going to drop unless something changes. You can get into real trouble. And I think that a lot of people may not realize that, okay, there's a ketogenic lifestyle, but we have to really be mindful of the medications that you're currently taking. In a perfect world, I'd love to see people get onto a ketogenic lifestyle, get off their medications, become metabolically healthy, and live a happy, healthy, long life. That's my goal.
Yeah, I think you're doing a really great job of getting that message out there. And I also think this ties in perfectly with these two articles that Leah has here. So I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thank you. Yes, definitely. There's a lot of, I guess, like maybe not even people realizing that, by changing their diet and lifestyle, it can have this dramatic decrease in their blood pressure that may have been a complaint for them, or dramatic drop in their blood sugar. And if they are taking medication for these certain things, it can cause them to have, potential side effects, or things to start not quite going right. I guess like one of the main things with the blood pressure dropping, you can quickly become dizzy and disorientated and all those kind of things. So there's not much awareness out there. I really like that you're empowering patients to be able to understand this a little bit more. So could you maybe talk us through how someone might go about this? And then we'll talk about maybe like how they can even prevent taking the medication in the first place through dietary change. So yeah.
It's a tough one, because it really depends on the patient's history. All right. So, if you've already had a heart attack or stroke, there's a certain protocol, and, the ketogenic diet is not going to magically fix everything. And so we have to be mindful of that. There's a lot of nuances there, but I would love to get people that are in that pre-diabetes range, which they have not had any events, any cardiovascular events. That's a perfect patient for me. They have not gone, because once you're there, unfortunately, there's a tough one. It's you don't want to be stopping any medications, because they have been shown to help with longevity, and does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. So what about being cautious? Like, so I feel like we read a lot of articles, right? So we've got one here, even it's just about like, should you change your diet when taking beta blockers? Like, this is not a common article that you'll see around. And then there's another one that we've got here, which is starting a low carb or keto diet with high blood pressure, which I thought was also not a common article that you would see around. But like, people are Googling, and someone has like, just say, just an average person with high blood pressure, they've been put on medication for blood pressure. They've seen that ketogenic diet, people have been having success. Maybe they're looking at reducing their weight, not even anything to do with blood pressure. And then they start, and all of a sudden things start going a bit funny. Like, what would you talk us through, like maybe what could be happening here? Like, what should they be, is there some precautions they should be taking? How can we get this awareness out?
Yeah, I mean, it really, first of all, the doctor who is prescribing the medications, they have to be informed about this. That is number one. I cannot stress that enough. I would not be able to tell anybody to stop their medications, but their doctor has to be aware of what's going on. Because when you start a ketogenic diet, with the dropping of the insulin, and when the kidneys are excreting the sodium, and the water, follows the sodium, and, the blood pressure drops. And, and the thing is that if they don't know what's going on, and they're still continuing the medications because the doctor is prescribing them, which is okay. But when we're dealing with the dietary changes, that the medicines have to be adjusted. They got to, especially if you're on like a diuretic, for example, like if you're on like hydrochlorothiazide or, even like anything like lisinopril or metoprolol, if they're on those, you have to really be mindful of that. And metoprolol is that beta blocker that's part of that article you were talking about. So, yeah.
And so they're going to go to their doctor and say, oh, I'm going to try this ketogenic diet. And what's the doctor going to say? No.
Yeah, I hope they're receptive to that. The thing is, unfortunately, I wish that the medical school were teaching their physicians about, not eat less and move more, but this is a hormonal situation here that we're dealing with. Insulin is, a major part of it. And I'm hoping that, the doctors that are out there are open to this idea that, things can be changed with the diet. So yeah, I mean, it's all about knowledge, about, getting people knowing what they're taking, how this diet can affect that, and let the doctor know that, hey, we got to be on a communication line here. Luckily with technology and a portal, and, hopefully that doctor would be willing to make those changes. They're going to have to, because you don't want a patient passing out. You don't want to be patient falling down a flight of stairs because their blood sugar dropped. These things have to be addressed.
Mm-hmm. And then on the other kind of side of things, like if you are changing your diet, and like, is there certain foods that you need to be, or supplements and that interact, like how many people actually read the little information slip inside the drug that they're taking to know that they should be avoiding certain things?
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple things I want to talk about regarding that. So the article that you had pulled up, it mentioned about grapefruit juice. In grapefruit juice, what happens when, and by the way, I want to stop for a second. Do you know anybody that drinks grapefruit juice on a regular basis?
Only if it's with vodka.
Right.
I've never drank grapefruit juice ever. And the only time I've ever heard of anyone even eating one is when they do the grapefruit diet, which is just all grapefruits, isn't it? Which is like ridiculous in itself.
We have a lot of grapefruit eaters in California.
Oh, do you?
Okay. That's like kind of big.
Yeah. I mean, the grapefruit, there is a potential interaction with, with a lot of medication. So what happens when you drink grapefruit juice, it inhibits the metabolism. So when you take a medication, the liver metabolizes that medication. And when you drink grapefruit or eat grapefruit, or drink grapefruit juice, that inhibits the metabolism. So technically the concentration of that medicine goes up. So you got to really be careful with that. Now, listen, because I still work for that major insurance company, and I talk to a lot of patients throughout the day. We have to be aware of that, but I don't see many people drinking grapefruits or grapefruit juice on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. So yes, we have to be concerned about that. But does it happen in real life? Not so much. So I want to mention that. The other thing I want to mention is that we have to stop demonizing salt. Mm-hmm. When I went to pharmacy school, and we're dealing with hypertension, it's like, oh, you got to avoid the salt. You got to avoid the salt. Salt is a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. We need salt, and I think that's something that we have to be mindful of, especially when especially if we're going on a ketogenic diet. You have to have that salt, because everything's getting flushed out by the kidneys. You got to replenish that, or else you're not going to do very well. You got that keto flu, which I'm sure we'll be talking about later on, but we have to really be mindful that we're demonizing the wrong white powder. It's the sugar that's the problem, not the salt.
Yeah, most definitely. And is there any other, so this article, like even the blood pressure medication one, which is actually a Diet Doctor blog, they were saying that, if you're on blood pressure medication and start a low carb diet, there's a risk of diet working too well. And so how can, so I guess the question is, like, if I'm just the average person and I try this, like, which I just asked before, but like, how can I find out this information? So I go to the doctor and the doctor tells me, I'd caution you against having a ketogenic diet. And the person's like, well, maybe I'm going to do it anyway. Would it then be like, should they go and seek advice from maybe a pharmacist to see whether they can help reduce their medication slowly or monitor it more, or what kind of things should they do there?
Yeah, I mean, you have to really do some homework, first of all, because, a lot of people, they'll say, oh, my doctor said keto is bad, so therefore I'm not going to do it. And that's the end of that. You have to kind of go to bat for yourself and do that extra legwork and find out that, hey, listen, the doctor is just, guiding you from what the doctors learned. And that's we can't blame the doctors because they were not taught this, and I would never blame the doctors for that. So the patients have to be willing to do that extra work. Pharmacists, and that's the thing too, I don't know too many pharmacists that can help because, again, we were taught very similar to what the doctors have been taught. And I don't know any pharmacists. I mean, I know a couple in our online community here, but that know about the ketogenic diet and know what to do about it. So patients are I'm hoping this changes as we continue on, but right now it's very difficult to get the information that you need and to help you and have that pharmacist there. But I think a pharmacist is super important. But finding that pharmacist, that's another story.
Yeah. That's why you've got to start making those reels, right? Dancing around, pointing at things.
Exactly.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I guess then, to tie Holly's article in about the keto flu, is there, like, if you're transitioning over onto a ketogenic diet and you're on some medications and you start feeling a little bit different or strange or maybe a little bit dizzy, is there a point when you're like, okay, I need to go and seek help? Should I do that straight away? Or is there a point where I'm kind of like, okay, maybe just the keto flu, ride it out for a couple of days? Like, what, theorizing here.
Yeah. Well, you have to trust the process, and there's a process that happens, and you gotta just understand it. If you don't know going in, you're going to be like, oh, why am I doing this diet? I mean, I feel horrible right now. I'm going to go grab a muffin or and get my carbs back up, and then you're never going to be successful. But if you know going into it, it's like, hey, this is what's happening in my body. My sodium's getting flushed out, the water's getting flushed out. I need to replenish. I need to get that salt back into my system. If you know about that going in, and this is a time where you shouldn't be doing any major exercising. This is something that just have to be in a calm state. Try to de-stress, because these things are all going to play into that you're being successful. So yeah, so it's one of those things where you have to really be mindful of everything, and you go down that road.
And Holly, do you want to draw in your keto flu talk now?
I do. I'm remembering a time, like, I did the Atkins diet like years ago, like when that was a thing. And I did that for years and loved it. And then, I don't know, something happened and I didn't for a while. I remember after having one of my babies, I told my husband, okay, we're going to go on the sugar detox diet. And it was just like a 10-day sugar detox or 21-day sugar detox. I don't know, but like day 3, I had to quit because I was like, I am sick. I can't go on. Like, I have the flu. And like, Atkins was like its own thing that didn't really walk you through the knowledge that we have now, I think. But I always look back on that moment and I go, I was not sick. I had the keto flu, like, so bad. I was having major sugar withdrawals to where I thought I was dying. I had the flu. I just needed some crackers and some 7-Up. So why don't you, like, I think everyone's kind of familiar with the term keto flu, but maybe not everyone knows exactly what it is, but it is what happens when you reduce your carbohydrates and your sugars. So what are some of those symptoms, and is there a way to prevent it or ease the symptoms?
Yeah, so so the symptoms, basically you feel like you have the flu. I mean, you are absolutely, you're dizzy, you feel horrible, you got a pounding headache. I'm not sure what did you experience when you had like when you had that flu?
I felt nauseous all the time, and I just
Yep.
like had no energy, and I just wanted to lay down, like, and I just felt like I just needed to eat.
Yeah, exactly. So when you are going into that, that the best thing to do is before it starts happening, get that bone. I'm a huge proponent of bone broth. I make my own bone broth at home. I've been doing it for years, and just make batches and batches and drink the bone broth with the salt. Get that nourishment in, so that when you do get off that sugar burning train and switch over to fat burning, it'll be a lot easier. Now, is it going to cure it 100%? Now, you may feel a little bad, when you, especially if you're really addicted to, the sugars and the grains, but this definitely will help transition. And just trust the process. Once you get over that hump, it's like clear sailing. It's like, oh my God, it's like the light is shown, and it's like you don't want to ever look back. But the bone broth, if not bone broth, then salted water or salted, you can buy bone broth at the store. Actually, I think Pacific Foods has a
Yeah.
great
Mm-hmm.
organic bone broth that's good.
Yeah.
And just salt that, and just don't be afraid of the salt. Because your body's getting rid of it. Um, you're not gonna have too much salt in your system. Your body doesn't, if it doesn't like it or doesn't want it, it will flush it out. Trust your body. Your body's meant to do this.
Yeah. And do you ever recommend people, instead of just going like cold turkey, I'm quitting sugar and grains, like, do you have an ease in approach? Sometimes does that help lessen the symptoms or?
Yeah, I mean, I did that cause I didn't know what I was getting myself into. So I had to, I kind of, and I had also had to do this too, because my wife wanted, I think she'd be like, what is going on with you? So I had to kind of like ease into that. And so I did that, switching over to, the ketogenic, lifestyle. It really depends on how gung ho you are, and how willing. And the thing is, like, yeah, I mean, you can definitely take some time to switch over. You're not, it will happen, but I kind of like the idea of just like, hey, look, buck stops here, just accept it. It's going to be tough. Be prepared and go forward.
Yeah. And I find with like clients, it kind of just depends on the client too. Cause sometimes if you
Right.
let them ease into it, then they have that, oh, this is the last time I'm going to have pizza. And they just go crazy and eat
Mhm.
everything thinking, oh, I'm easing into this. So sometimes it is just like rip the Band-Aid off. You're done.
Right.
You've had your whole entire lifetime of indulging. Stop.
Exactly. Yeah. And that, by the way, that, when you make that decision to go on a ketogenic, the worst thing to be doing is having like, 12 slices of pizza, the day before. That's going to make
Yes.
things so horrible.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Not that I know.
Right.
All right. All right. This is really good. I don't think we have anything else to talk about on keto flu. Like that's pretty much it. Leah, do you have anything you want to add
Well,
on here?
the only other question I wanted to ask, like, do you recommend, so like if you've got headaches, taking anything, or like, is there a supplement to take, or maybe electrolytes, or you just go straight the bone broth and salt route?
Salt and bone broth. Yeah. Again, I'm like one of the pharmacists that will just, there are so many things over the counter. I try to avoid that as much as possible. I'm a huge salt fan. I'm also a huge magnesium fan. And potassium, yeah, that might actually help too. Just, it's a bottom line, electrolytes. Um, Go the natural route. You don't need to take a Tylenol. You don't need, I mean, you can, but why would you want to do that? I mean, this is something that you got to just retrain your body to do the right thing. And so why mess it up with medication?
I love
And
that.
I think sometimes it's also important to like embrace the suck and to know that how bad you hurt right now is can be a gauge of how metabolically unhealthy you are. So like own that, say, oh my gosh, wow, I really need this. Like my body is miserable. I hurt. I really need to heal and repair. So just go through the suck so you don't have to do it
That's right.
again.
Such tough love,
Yeah.
Holly.
I
Hate to be
am a
one of your
tough love.
children.
Oh yeah, I'm 100% on your side on this one. I like the way you think. Absolutely.
What about it's funny because like people will be like, oh, I feel like death, I've got the keto flu, and then they go and like pump their body full of electrolytes, not knowing the difference in different electrolytes. So, like they're just going down, and I don't know the same brands in the US as we have here, but like do you
like
have Hydrolyte or something like that? A lot like an
liquid
ice
IV
block.
is like a big one here.
Yeah.
But
And
it's
they're
like
just
all sugar.
It's all sugar, you know. Or they end up running to the bathroom because they've pumped themselves full of too much stuff, like disaster pants.
Yeah, you have to be careful of that. Absolutely. When you're your body's telling us like what's going on here. Your digestive system is like, what are you doing to me? And you might have that. And so like Holly said, just gotta just hang tight, get over it, and things will be okay after that.
Yeah, because it really only lasts a couple of days anyway. So
right.
then you're in the fun zone where you're fat burning and you can take on the world.
Not only fat burning, but like I've started going into fasting too. Last year I did a 119-hour fast.
Wow. I don't even know how many days that is because I don't math too good.
Yeah, I stopped eating on Sunday night and I went through until Friday afternoon, and the amount of mental clarity I had was just through the roof. A little tough, at the beginning because your body's like, what is going on? But don't try this at home unless you are, fat adapted, because if you start doing this when you're eating your pizzas, you're going to run into some major trouble. But actually it was not bad for me. And, I kept up with I did salt and water, and the mental clarity was just amazing. So there's a lot of things you can do once you're fat adapted. It's amazing.
Yeah. Definitely. Well, I think I want to title this podcast Keto Flu and Disaster Pants in the Fun Zone. Like those three things.
Sounds good to me.
I think it'll be our highest rated show. Just off the title.
Yeah, perfect.
All right. Where can our guests find our listeners find you and watch you do fun dancing reels and stuff?
Yeah, I'm not sure about the latter, but the Ketogenic Pharmacist, all one word. The Ketogenic Pharmacist. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm also on a new platform, which is very new, called Zion. This is something that JP Sears has started. You have to pay for it, but you own your own stuff, and it's built based on the Bitcoin network. And I don't know about it. I've started it and just see what happens with that too, because I think that might be the future with the way things going with social media. So I'll leave it at that.
That sounds fun. Okay, well, we'll be sure to link that all up. And I know you have a website too. That's also the Ketogenic Pharmacist.
Yeah, the ketogenicpharmacist.com. Okay. Yeah, so that's another way too. So
makes it easy. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we'll wrap it up here. That is the end of today's episode. Our theme music is created by Andrew Bowden, and production services are Kevin Kennedy Spain of Disc of Light Media. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week.